Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be doing a unboxing video of Honeywell's Lyric Thermostat. Now the Lyric Thermostat was actually recently announced, I believe in January of 2014, and it's finally available in the Canadian market as of mid-August 2014. So initially this was only able to be purchased through professional Honeywell dealers, which the general public can't buy from. But now for $275 you can purchase this from any Lowe's or any authorized Honeywell dealer. Now this is the Canadian version here as depicted by the Canadian map on the back. And this thermostat here claims to have the ability to save you anywhere between $42 and $183 worth of energy savings if you use this thermostat. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. Now it is worth mentioning here that the actual product box itself is a really thick, heavy constructed cardboard that's got this nice sort of overlay printing. Not that anyone technically cares, but in comparison to the Nest product, this box presentation wise is considerably better. Now once you take the thermostat out of the box sleeve, you can sort of see sort of the different modes that the thermostat will sort of display on its front panel, anywhere from, you know, away mode for how many hours, the local weather, as well as the interior temperature and what the set point temperature is in air conditioning mode, and vice versa. And inside, fairly basic, like how a Nest was packaged from the factory, is that you've got your actual thermostat assembly here that can be detached from the mounting base. Beneath it, we've got the actual thermostat intelligent mounting plate with integral built-in level and lithium battery backup, as well as the smart pin connectors here where you don't need to have any screwdrivers to install the wiring. Now as you can tell here that this supports many different modes or configurations of heating systems, from your basic one-stage heat and one-stage cooling to heat pump support, as well as 3 heat and 2 cooling modes for those people with those fancy HVAC systems. Now inside, below the base plate, we see that there are 2 screws here with included drywall studs, which look like this, necessary to mount the thermostat. And then below this, if you actually remove the insert, you'll also see the mounting plate overlay for those that want to conceal the holes in their drywall, or the old mounting holes from the old thermostat once it's been removed from the wall. So basically how this is installed is, if you have a really big hole, you can put the plate on like this, and then you can then snap in your upper plate like this, snap that on, and then basically the thermostat would install like this. Now remember, this large backing plate is actually optional, but again, if you have a very large hole on your drywall or a whole bunch of damage behind it from the old thermostat, then you'd want to use this to save yourself a bunch of work. So now that we've unboxed all the different little pieces and parts from the box, you'll notice that there was actually no documentation or printed instructions showing or explaining how to install this thermostat. Now Honeywell's sort of mentality was that all the resources can actually be found in their iOS or Android smart app, or you can go onto Honeywell's website and look under Lyric Technical Support. So let's go ahead and install this thermostat on a home that has a single stage heat, single stage cool, as well as humidifier, and see how well it performs. Now before we do any electrical work on our HVAC system, we want to make sure that we don't do any damage to the furnace, air conditioning, or other related components. So it's best advised that you go ahead to your circuit breaker panel and disconnect the furnace from the mains by switching off this particular breaker. And if your home has air conditioning, it might actually also be advisable to go ahead and also shut off the breaker for the air conditioning condenser as well. So now that the power's been shut off from the system, you'll also notice that on many HVAC systems that the display actually may still be illuminated, and that's because a lot of these thermostats that come built in with homes, or ones that you buy from the hardware store, actually have a battery compartment here that's used to power the thermostat. So as I opened up the compartment, you saw that the display has actually gone out. So that's okay, as long as we know that the main power's been shut off. We can go ahead and carefully lift the bottom of our thermostat here and actually carefully remove it from its mounting plate like this. Now you're going to need a screwdriver, either a Phillips or a small flathead, as well as a pair of pliers here to disconnect the mounting plate on the old thermostat and to remove all the different terminal screws, as well as requiring a thermostat to actually remount the new Lyric thermostat to the drywall. Now, one thing is, before you do any of this type of work, it's advisable that you take a notepad and make note of all the different colored wires and which terminals they actually connect to on your existing thermostat. Go ahead and disconnect the cable terminals. Carefully remove the wires. Now remove the mounting plate. Now that we've removed the old thermostat from the wall, we're going to go ahead and tackle the humidistat located directly above the old thermostat mounting location. It simply opens up by putting our thumb underneath the cover and then removing it like this. And we'll take note here that the wires that are hooked up to our humidifier is this brown and blue wire connected with a bunch of morettes. So we can go ahead and remove these as well. Now, for the purposes of this video, just to show the basic install of this thermostat, we're not going to worry about the cosmetic details around the drywall behind the old thermostat. The reason why is that even if I do the install with the Lyric here, I'm going to have a humongous gaping hole behind this humidistat, so I might as well go ahead and install the Lyric in the manner that I'd like to see it. Now, in my particular home, I would like to actually have a minimalist approach to the appearance and not have this gigantic faceplate on the wall. And fish the wires here, which I've disconnected from the humidistat and the old thermostat in this line set, and then feed it through the base plate on the thermostat. Now, if you're mounting onto drywall without a stud, you're going to have to install the drywall studs. If you have studs behind here, then you can go ahead and just simply use these two included screws and mount them here and here. Now, what's really neat about this base plate is that it actually has an included bubble level here, which shows you the proper level for accurate orientation when the actual thermostat assembly is placed over the base plate. So before we do any wiring onto the base of the thermostat, we want to go and install the smart app onto our smart device first. So iOS or Android will dictate which app store you're going to go to. But how you find it in the Apple app store is that we need to type in Honeywell Lyric and go ahead and search for that. And as you can see, it pops up and it says free. So we're going to go ahead and install that. Now, the reason why we need to install the app is so that we actually have clear instructions explaining how to actually wire up the humidifier for this thermostat. So it'll take about 2 to 3 minutes for the app to download and install on this smart Apple iPad. So what we're going to have to do is that upon startup, the Lyric start page will actually prompt us for an email address and password. If you don't have one, we're going to have to go ahead and click Create Account. So once we've created a user account, it'll prompt us to check our email that we've linked to our Lyric account to confirm our activation. And once we've confirmed it, it'll actually bring you to the screen saying user activation, you are activated. Install the thermostat according to what we know. So I mentioned earlier that this green wire goes to G. So we can go ahead and slide it in like this. W was black. Y was this light red orangey color for our air conditioning. Red was for R, or heat. And then we can just carefully tuck these wires into the wall cavity so that they're out of the way. Now, a neat thing with the Lyric, as well as the Nest, is that it's got this neat little functionality where you don't actually have to screw anything in. Again, these are called quick connect slide connectors, which makes installation a whole lot easier. Now, after doing a little bit of researching as well as probing around inside the control box of our furnace, it was actually identified that this blue wire here that was controlling the humidifier is actually the common wire that goes onto the furnace control board, which supplies 24 volts AC for the humidifier water solenoid. So we can just go ahead and push this blue terminal into the common connector. And the brown wire is actually hooked up to the universal 1B or the 1A connector. Basically, U1B and U1A is essentially, ventilation controls or sort of additional add-ons onto your HVAC system. So it doesn't really matter which one you want to hook up. We'll just simply, for the sake of simplicity, use U1A. Now, it's worth mentioning here that on this wall plate here, it was a subtle thing that we didn't initially notice, and there's actually some sliders that kind of pop out here to cover certain wiring terminals. And the reason why is that on certain systems, especially with multi-stage heating and cooling, or with complicated sort of system dampers and zoning controls, that you can actually hook up additional connectors or wires onto the connector plate. So these just simply cover up those holes that you might not use for sort of one wire configurations, and if you slide these open, it exposes the actual wiring port for multi-wire connections. In the context of how we're going to be using it, it's going to be fairly straightforward. We're just going to go ahead and use U1A for our humidifier. So once everything's installed, we can go ahead and carefully tuck all the wires back into the wall cavity, making sure that there's no exposed copper along the pin bus, and then making sure that our thermostat is still level. Go ahead and installing the battery back in with the negative terminal towards the gold colored spring. Go ahead and turn the power back on for the AC condenser as well as the furnace. Now, I mentioned earlier in my video here that there's these little side switches that exposes or covers up the terminals here on the thermostat base that we may or may not use. Now, it is actually worth mentioning, after going through some documentation on the Lyric app, that if we're not actually using RC or U1B terminals, that we should actually flip these little switches out to cover those terminals. And the reason why those are important is that these are actually dip switches that tell this particular thermostat what mode it can or cannot operate in. So, for an added precaution, we want to make sure that since we're not using these two terminals, that we flip this dip switch out to cover the terminal contacts. So let's go ahead and install this thermostat. Now, it's really neat because this thermostat actually feels like it's being held in magnetically. And to install it, we just simply press it firmly against the base, and it should begin booting up like this. Now, while we're waiting for the Lyric thermostat here to boot up, it's been about 2 or 3 minutes here, and it's still doing its thing. I want to talk about some differences between the Nest and the Lyric thermostat. For starters, the Nest, as compared to the Lyric in terms of build quality, is actually better because the Nest actually has a front glass dome screen with a colored background, as well as the actual bezel itself is made out of brushed stainless steel with a built-in lithium rechargeable battery. Whereas on the Lyric, the front panel appears to be made of some type of plastic. The adjustment bezel ring is made from a sort of a chrome or aluminized plastic finish, and it just uses a simple, single 1.5 volt AAA lithium battery that's not rechargeable. Now, these differences are very subtle. It just depends on how particular you are about these things. It doesn't change how a thermostat behaves or how it's supposed to perform. But again, when you're talking a thermostat that costs anywhere between $250 to $300, that just highlights some of the differences that your money will buy. Okay, so now that the Lyric has booted up and we've started up our Lyric app on our iPad, it says, touch go when the Lyric app says you're ready to configure me. So it says start the Lyric wireless network. And so go ahead and press go. And it goes, I'm looking for your device. So what happens is that the Lyric thermostat will go into a broadcast mode for the next 3 minutes. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to start looking for a Wi-Fi network that both the app and the thermostat is connecting to. So when the Lyric stat begins to go into broadcasting mode, you go into your iPad, since we're using an iOS app, that you go into the Wi-Fi settings and you can actually see the Lyric stat 0B. So we're going to touch that just to link them together. And then after about 15 seconds, the app itself and the thermostat should be linked. So we're going to return to the Lyric app. And it should begin initializing. And now it says, I'm connected to Darren's iPad. So it says, now use the app to set me up. So it says, cannot initialize thermostat, so we go ahead and retry. And it looks like it's doing its thing, even though it gave me an error. So there's actually some numerous complaints currently right now with the existing Lyric app today, as well as the firmware that's installed in Thermostat that makes the software a little bit kludgy by comparison to the Nest version of this thermostat. So anyways, that being said, we're gonna go ahead and set this all up using our iPad. Okay. So now our Lyric app is asking us a bunch of questions about our HVAC system. So it begins with heating system, giving you the option of conventional, heat pump, radiant, other, and none. So I'm going to go through here. I'm not going to explain everything that I've got other than what we already know. So I've got conventional forced air. My fuel source is gas. High efficiency actually, because my furnace is 90+% efficient. I have one cooling stage, one heat stage, and then it goes, what temperatures do you prefer when you're at home? So in my particular case, I actually like to have my home down at about 72 degrees Fahrenheit for cool, and then for heat, I actually like it to be, about 70 or so. Now, you'll notice that as I adjust, there's always going to be a 2 degree Fahrenheit differential between the heating and cooling temperatures, and that's to protect the equipment to make sure that it's not fighting against itself when it overshoots on the cool or if it overshoots slightly on the heating side. Now, it says away settings. It goes, what mode do you prefer when you are away? Automatic, and the Honeywell thermostat will automatically maximize the savings based on what it knows about the home over time, or we can actually manually configure it for a specific temperature. We'll leave it for automatic for now. So it gives you a configuration summary of everything that we've got. We're going to go ahead and say accept or next, and it says configuration complete. So we can go start connecting. So we can go ahead and select our home Wi-Fi network again. Or next. We can enter our password. We can go next. And it says connecting, which is now actually programming the thermostat with our Wi-Fi network information. And as you can see here on the Lyric thermostat on the top, it actually says connecting. So we know that there's some degree of connectivity right now. Now for those that are wondering, can you actually use the Lyric thermostat without a Wi-Fi connection? Technically you could, and it'll just simply behave as a conventional thermostat. So upon completion, it says, I'm connected. It goes, register me in the Lyric app, which I believe it's already been done. So we just go ahead and say next, and we can begin the personalization mode on the thermostat. So I can say things like location names, such as home, right? Thermostat name, home, and go next. And then we can actually register our thermostat for warranty purposes. So this is what the thermostat looks like while it's in operation, with the main display showing the current temperature indoors, and then the snowflake here showing what operational state the system's in, as well as the temperature set point, which is 72 degrees. To the left here, we've got a little weather icon here that shows you on a 6-hour window increment the outdoor weather temperature as well as humidity conditions, 8 p.m., 2 a.m., and 8 a.m., etc. Just sort of giving you an idea of what the outdoor conditions are like. To the right, we've got a little home button with a clock icon on it, which will basically help us define or give you the ability, to tell the Lyric from this front panel display how long you may be away from home for. And as you can see here, I can toggle the number of hours up, and it'll actually increment the time to indicate when I would be back for those that can't do math properly. And then on the top, you've got a accept or decline the settings checkbox dialog here. So you just go ahead and reject, and then it'll bring you back to the home screen. Now what's really interesting about this thermostat is that during the cooling cycle, or whenever you're doing a cooling adjustment, that you'll see every so often here a blue halo surrounding the thermostat, just giving you a visual indicator, say if you're in the adjacent room, of what mode the thermostat is operating in and whether the HVAC system is on. Now another neat little feature here is that as I'm adjusting the temperature set point here, I can go ahead and turn the temperature down, and as I go lower and lower, it actually makes a declining sort of lower and lower octave tones as we go lower and lower in temperature and higher as we increase. Now that's as far as how the thermostat can operate from the front panel user interface. Where the Lyric is really going to shine is in the actual mobile device app, which can be loaded onto your Android or Apple iOS device. So the Honeywell Lyric's power really comes from using the mobile application that is available for iOS or an Android. So basically what that mobile app is a virtual or electronic representation of the physical thermostat on the main screen, which gives you the same features to say, I want to know what the weather's like, I want to define how long I'm going to be away from home, whether I want to set the system mode to off or cooling. In this case, I just shut it off and you just notice that this 22-degree temperature just went from blue to black, saying that the system is now off. As well as setting some of the advanced preferences like your humidity levels, as well as enabling or disabling adaptive recovery, or using the new fine-tuned sort of comfortable climate control technology that's been introduced in the Lyric system. Basically what it means is that, say, if the outdoor conditions meet a specific criteria, that the system will adjust your HVAC system to run as little as possible to achieve a reasonable comfort level. I haven't had enough exposure to know what that's like, so I can't comment on how well that actually works. To the left here you can see that there's 5 different things here: home, away, I'm leaving, going to sleep, and I'm arriving home. And basically what these different screens allow you to do is define certain temperature and humidity profiles so that you can maximize comfort and reduce your overall energy costs. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning here is that in the Honeywell application, it strictly runs on a mobile device, and there's not actually a means to run things on a web browser portal. So for example, if you're at the office and you're on your way home, you can't go to Internet Explorer or Firefox or whatever web browser you like to use to actually enable or disable your HVAC system and have it ready at the right temperature set point when you get home. But I think what Honeywell's mentality was is that if you have your mobile device on you all the time, then there shouldn't really be a need for a mobile app. So I guess I sort of understand why they would do it the way they did. Other neat things about the Lyric is that it has certain features that are on Honeywell's most premium thermostats, is things like auto changeover mode, which allow the system to run in both heat and cooling mode, which is particularly useful during the fall and spring seasons when temperatures during the day can still be quite warm, but temperatures at night begin to dip down such that you would actually need to heat your home. So that's a really neat thing to do. It also has an away setting that's automatic or manual, again allowing you to define the temperature set points in each particular instance. And so basically this is the Honeywell app in a nutshell. Now, for the sake of comparison, I have an iPad here on the left that is actually running the Nest mobile app. And very much like the Honeywell setup, it is a virtual representation of the Nest thermostat controls. So the home screen here is very basic. It's not quite like the Lyric, and it doesn't look nearly as busy, but it gives you the basic information that most people would be looking for, such as your outdoor temperature, whether it's day or night. If this thermostat turns blue, it means the system is running, what mode it's operating in, as well as the thermostat's name. Now, to get more specific details about the home, we can actually touch the thermostat to understand that the circulation fan is running. And then if we touch this sidebar on the right, it'll also give us an indication of what the interior humidity is, as well as some other pieces of information that most homeowners may find useful, such as energy history, which surprisingly the Lyric actually lacks, whereas on the Nest it actually gives you a weekly snapshot of all the energy usage, whether you're in heating and cooling mode, as well as detailed explanations as to when the system was run and what contributing factors led to why the system ran more or less than the weekly average. So for example, here on Wednesday, August 13th, when I touch this bar, it shows me exactly when and how long my HVAC system ran throughout the day. If I go and touch the side icon that's listed right here, it will actually tell me exactly why, and it goes, this day's weather caused energy usage above the weekly average. So it's really neat and useful for homeowners that are very conscious about their energy consumption. Whereas on the Lyric system, it doesn't actually tell you anywhere how long your systems run, or at least I haven't found it. So the Nest interface seems to be easier to use. It's a little more refined, but remember that the Nest system has been out for over 3 years, whereas Lyric has literally just hit mainstream market in the last few months. Other things about the Nest mobile app, right? Now remember, the Nest mobile app is applicable to Android, it's applicable to iOS, and it's also applicable to a standard web browser, whereas the Lyric system does not allow you to do that. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but again, Nest gives you a little more options and actually comes in at a cheaper price point at about $249 for a thermostat versus $275 to $300 for the Lyric system. And I mentioned in my video earlier that the Nest actually has better build quality as far as materials being used, glass and stainless steel, whereas the Lyric is using plastic and polycarbonate components. So anyways, if you look here on the Nest side of things, right, it's very much the same like how the Lyric is set up. And then, things like humidity, for example. I remember Nest for a long time did not allow you to control humidifier levels via their mobile app. And now in the most recent release, they can do that. And so if you see here, Nest doesn't give you an actual percentage of humidity settings, whereas on the Honeywell system it does. So there's just little things here that would annoy me, and there's some neat things that would absolutely, make one a lot better than the other. But for now, the Honeywell Lyric, really is a direct competing product against Nest. It offers basically everything that Nest can do, and they're trying to offer more, such as the geofencing capabilities, which Nest is currently lacking. So, in a nutshell, whichever decision you make, either one will serve you very well. So, I think they both will serve their core functions very well. It's just a question of preference as far as what long-term support each product will have and how well it will meet up or mate up with your HVAC system. I hope you found this useful and informative. Rate, comment, and subscribe.